welcome to Athlantic, the show where an American and a Brit take turns crossing the pond to learn about sport culture in the UK and the USA. I'm Adam Jordan, your resident American.
And I'm Harry Collins, your resident Brit. What a wonderful couple of weeks we've had in sport. Adam, I think you've been a little bit closer to some of it than I have. If you want to tell everyone what you were doing last weekend.
Yeah, not to flex or anything, but I was at Sunday of what is one of the best Masters in recent memory, and maybe all time.
It's so cool,
unbelievable. I was very lucky to be able to attend. The Masters is everything that everybody says it is, and it is absolutely a bucket list item. And I really hope I can go back because oh my god, it was amazing. Yeah, go ahead.
I've not long interacted with like watching golf.
Yeah.
I watched like the last Masters in passing, but only after spending time with you, meeting your family who are all sort of golfers, have I like started to pay more attention. I had no appreciation for how literally how magical the Masters actually is, how special I think is the place I'm looking for that Augusta is. What is it like just to be on such, I know this is a term thrown around by every sports fan, but like such hallowed turf?
Yeah, it's wild because it's one of those things that gets built up so heavily because it's hard to get a ticket to. It's one of the most exclusive clubs. Augusta National Golf Club is one of the most exclusive clubs in the country, sure, probably in the world. For better and worse, there's certainly a very, very checkered past and a very checkered recent past with Augusta and who they would let be members and that kind of thing. But in terms of just the sport itself and the facility itself, like I said, a lot of people build it up very, very highly, but it lives up to the expectation that you have for it. I genuinely, and you'll hear pretty much everybody that does have the chance to go say this same thing, but not being allowed to have your phone with you or electronic devices or recording devices, it changes everything. Like you're actively talking to the people next to you and sure, wondering what's happening on the course and reacting to everything and taking everything in. I mean, my memories are so vivid. It's awesome. It's everything you'd hope it to be and more.
Obviously, being a couple thousand miles further away, I haven't been. I would love to change that at some point, but my only interaction with it has been through TV. I've watched every moment of coverage this week, and I learned some incredible things about the Masters that I had no idea about. No phones. People are allowed to take pictures on one of the days, but you can't have cameras.
Yeah, on the practice round days. So they sell tickets on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't think they do the Sunday before. I think it's just Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you can be there with just a camera, but right, it can't be anything more than that.
Did you eat any of the super cheap concessions?
Yes, I ate a ton of them. I had several pimento cheese sandwiches, egg salad sandwiches. I had one of the most famous things that they have there is this ice cream sandwich with peach ice cream. I unfortunately am not a fan of peaches, so I did not go for that. But
a southern boy that doesn't like peach. I'm literally drinking peach tea here.
Yeah, you're a far more true blue southern man than I am.
Also, no logos, no advertising. It's other than the fact that obviously golf courses are always these sort of wonderful spaces that are set like arboretums with gorgeous trees and foliage and manicured lawns. The Masters has no Rolex sign or no, brought to you by Mercedes.
Right.
Which I think, when you're watching it on TV and it's just sport, firstly, it makes every picture timeless. Because other than literally the resolution of the cameras, am I watching 2025, 2005, 85. And, so it makes it timeless. Also, it's so classy and so utopic in what is obviously sport is like hyper commercialized. We're going to talk about, today we're going to talk about a sport that's only just recently allowed professionalization. In the next episode, we're going to talk about a sport that has like branding everywhere. And that's a huge part of it, but the Masters is nothing. I can't. And it maintains that while still being the epitome of that sport.
Truly.
Yeah, like is that weird to see in person, or is it actually all sort of smoke and mirrors? And every cameraman has got a logo on his back.
No, definitely not smoke and mirrors. No, you definitely feel that. I mean, everybody walking around there, I mean, just seems so genuinely happy just to be there and loves the grounds, is respectful of it. There's so much there that people I think cherish, and what you said is spot on. But we'll have to get you, and that, I mean, you see that in part of why that's part of why Rory McIlroy's win was he had such a visceral reaction to it. Obviously, the career Grand Slam is an incredible achievement, one of the most rare in sports. But completing that at the Masters and that's the tournament that Rory always dreamt of winning when he was a kid, and that there's a reason for that. So we'll have to make sure that come June that we get you entered into the ticket lottery to hopefully get a chance to come over.
I will be at the Open at Portrush this year, so I will break my. I'll pop my golf spectating cherry, but coming to see something in either Augusta or obviously Charlotte hosts the US Open, isn't that right?
Yes, actually here in
that'd be cool.
a month. At Quail Hollow. So it'll be interesting.
Wicked.
Yeah, okay, so a couple other things on our news section. You put a couple things on there on our show notes that I have no idea what they are, so please tell me.
Obviously, the Masters is a wonderful historic event. It was one of three amazing, age-old sports events that we don't really get to talk about at other times. The first one I want to talk about is the boat race in London. It is hosted between Putney Bridge and Barnes Bridge on the Thames, and it is Oxford University versus Cambridge University.
Yes.
In rowing boats, there's the women's and the men's, and that happened on Sunday. One of the reasons we haven't recorded in a couple of weeks is I recently, for work, have just relocated to Putney, which is very, very close to where this was hosted. So I've seen this up close, big time.
Oh, cool.
And it is almost, I think it's around 200 years old. Something silly like 120 years of consecutive races.
You can just admit that you were in the race. It's okay.
Yeah, I was in it, and that's why Oxford, which is very much home for me, lost really dramatically in both the men's and the women's races, which is a shame. But it's a really fun historic tradition. It brings out hundreds of thousands of spectators along the Thames. And it really had this sort of prestigious air about it. I think, and I'm gonna say this with the confidence of a straight white man, and then I'm gonna check it. I think the oldest ever international sports competition was a rowing race between Harvard and Oxford. Which
sounds vaguely familiar to me.
Right. I think we both took Professor Andrews' class. And we both learned that at some point, but I will check that. So there's like huge pedigree in university rowing. Obviously, often they contribute rowers to the Olympics. It's a little bit less common nowadays. But yeah, the boat race happened between Oxford and Cambridge, the UK's two most prestigious universities. And Cambridge have now won 3 years in a row, which is a little shame.
Now that you're mentioning this, I feel like I may have learned this in Professor Harry's class at one point. I feel like you may have told me that this exists at one point, but I don't know anything about it. I think this sounds like an episode unto itself one day.
This absolutely could be an episode unto itself.
Yeah, I would love
As
to hear more.
could the other silly race that happened this weekend. That my flatmate will be very pleased that I've mentioned was the Paris-Roubaix cycle race, which is a silly distance. I think it's something, I think you mentioned it's like over 200 kilometers. But unlike your usual time trial or long sort of straightforward race that typically happen on asphalt or just regular roads, this one takes place on cobbled streets, which I know are a rarity in the US, full stop. But this silly race takes place over hundreds of kilometers of partly cobbled, partly paved streets and roads through France.
Just hours of being incredibly uncomfortable.
Carnage, absolute carnage. And it's a race where obviously, because it's so challenging, if it rains, everyone's screwed because cobblestones get very slick.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't rain, you're riding over like the most uneven surface you can imagine. What's really interesting this year was it was won by Matty van der Poel, who is incredible at this race. He's a protege at this specialist type of cycle race. But the guy who came second, who is Tadej Pogačar, is may well be another entry into today's type of episode, because he is probably going to be sort of the new generational talent in world cycling.
Wow. Okay.
He apparently had no right to even enter this race, let alone be so good at it that he finished a minute or so behind the leader on his first attempt. But yeah, anyone who pays attention to cycling will know, firstly, far more than me, and certainly that I'm probably pronouncing these names wrong. I apologize, Dan. But Matteo van der Poel and Tadej Pogačar are two absolute heavyweights in cycling at slightly different disciplines. And what we watched on Saturday or Sunday was this incredible rivalry where they were both within a bike's length of each other for many kilometers, and then unfortunately Pogačar, who was again making his debut, crashed. He still got up and finished. I think he picked up a new bike and everything. But yeah, fascinating
Crazy
race. I think at some point I will bow to the peer pressure and we will do a full episode either on Tour de France, which is coming up, or some of these one-day stages, because cycle racing is far more interesting than I'd ever give it credit for.
Yeah,
it's really good. It's really cool.
That's one that I think you're gonna have to. It's gonna have to be a classic. Like I convinced you that NASCAR is respectable. I think you're gonna need to convince me. Not that I don't respect the athletes that do it, because that is an absolutely incredibly difficult thing, but it seems so simple to me. So definitely excited to learn more about that. And, it sounds like there is a lot of pressure coming from down the hall on,
a little bit
on our producer over there. Well, I'm glad that you kind of teased what we're doing today on this episode. We're starting our first ever real kind of mini series here. Some of it will be sequential. Some of it will kind of pick up and put down as we go throughout different types of episodes throughout the run here of Athlantic, but that is going to be on Dynasties. And today we are having our first Dynasty. I nominated UConn women's basketball, the University of Connecticut women's basketball team program, which has really since the 90s been you could argue the most dominant program in all of college sports in the United States.
Wow.
It's one of the most incredible things, and we've got great timing on it because they just won the national championship for the 12th time, which only scratches the surface of how incredible they are. So, Harry, do you know anything about UConn women's basketball?
I know that they recently won their 12th Natty Championship.
There
And
you
I
go.
learned that 8 seconds ago. No, I know very, very little. I remember when I was at UNC, you and I think, spoke about what March Madness means. It was my first time sort of falling into it. And I was made aware that UNC are very good, but UConn are just, the gold standard. Other than that, I don't know.
All right.
I only found out very recently that UConn was Connecticut.
There you go.
Yeah, that's
The
so
lovely-
I'm coming in very fresh.
The lovely town of Storrs, Connecticut holds quite the is quite the mecca for basketball. So, all right, well, let's get you up to speed then. So, the way that we're going to do these kind of dynasty episodes, and these will be shorter than kind of some of our normal episodes in most cases, but we're going to break it down into four different areas. So, we'll start off with the story of the dynasty. Then go to the people that drive it or drove it if it's a past tense dynasty. The end of it, again, assuming it's past tense, which kind of yes, kind of no. It's Schrodinger's dynasty
Cool.
for UConn women's basketball. And I mean, again, obviously they just won their 12th championship, so we're very much in a good place to say that it's probably still going. And then the legacy, what people will take from it, what they've meant to their overall sport. So yeah, let's get going. So let's start off with the story of UConn women's basketball. Won't go into every nitty-gritty detail of the start of the program, but it was around for about 20 years before it became the program that we know today. We are going, for our purposes, not that the stories of those that came before are insignificant, but for the story of the dynasty, we're going to fast forward here to the 1980s when, in fact, let me get the exact specific year here, when, as we will preview a little bit of the people part of things, 1985 is when Geno Auriemma, the head coach of UConn women's basketball, arrived in Storrs, Connecticut. Since his, actually overall, UConn women's basketball, to put it into perspective, has won 80% of all of their games played. Their head coach...
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whatever?
Ever. Of every single game played.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. You and I have a very different understanding of the word dynasty. Wow, this is real dominance.
Yeah,
oh my
goody
lord.
Unbelievable, and that's why we had to start off with a banger. So
yeah, this is a good one.
And most of that came with pretty much all of that came with Geno Auriemma, who we'll get into. But I want to start off with the fact that if you just take a look at the Wikipedia page for UConn women's basketball or go into the media guide for UConn women's basketball, you will see records galore. They have the most national championships of any program, 12. 6 of those national championships have come in undefeated seasons. So they've had 6 seasons where nobody's been able to beat them. They hold the record for the longest winning streak in college basketball, that's men's or women's. Between 2014 and 2017, they won 111 straight games. Harry.
Good grief.
And during that time period, they won 4 straight national championships.
Wow.
So I said 111 games, right? It's probably a few that, the ball had to bounce their way. They squeaked it out. Maybe they got a lucky shot or two. 108 of those games were decided by double digits.
Wow.
So we're not just talking sustained excellence. We're talking about sustained dominance.
And double digits is at minimum a 4-possession game, right? To overturn 10 points would be a minimum of 4 possessions.
Yes.
Crikey.
Yes. So that's
wow. All right. Hey, coming out strong.
Incredibly. They started on November 23rd, 2014, and it only ended on a buzzer beater in the Final Four to Mississippi State in 2017.
Good grief.
What if I told you that they also have the second longest streak in men's or women's college basketball?
Yeah, cool. Wicked. Yeah, cool.
They had 2 undefeated seasons in 08 and 09 and 09-10, and around that they won 90 consecutive wins. So they set the record, and then 4 years later just absolutely smashed it by almost 25%, which is just unbelievable to think about. So let's just, at the risk of making this whole thing just a list of incredible achievements, I feel like it's helpful to read out some more of these records that they have. So overall, their records, they have the most, like I said, most NCAA championships, men or women's. They have the most Final Fours, men or women's, with 24. They have the most Elite Eights. So all of these, again, if you're unfamiliar, this is how far you make it. Final Four, you're one of the Final Four teams left. If you're Elite Eight, you're one of the 8 teams left in the tournament. Pretty self-explanatory.
This is because Americans are terrified of saying quarter and semi-final, everyone.
We just like alliteration, Harry. They have the most Elite Eights in women's college basketball with 28. They have...
Wow.
Yeah. They've been the number 1 seed in the tournament more times than any men's or women's team with 22. Those 6 undefeated seasons are the most by any team, men's or women's. They have had the most weeks ranked number 1 in the country in the AP poll, which will harken back to the college football episode there. And then let's get to some of the streaks too. I'll get you 2 of them that are active. So the other bit of alliteration in the tournament.
Oh my God.
Yeah, there's some big active streaks here. The other part of the tournament that is full of alliteration is the Sweet 16. They have been to 31 consecutive Sweet 16s. So that means that they have won at least 2 games in every single NCAA tournament since 1994.
Wow.
Pretty good.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So 31?
31 times in a row.
More than I've been alive.
Yeah.
I haven't been alive for 31 of those.
Yeah. Wow. That's what's wild to think about. I mean, so much of this is wild to think about. But
wait, there are members of the team who were not born when that streak. There are
all of the members of the team.
2 lifetimes of team members. Yeah. Wow. Okay, this is good grief.
Yeah. These people haven't known a time where UConn women's basketball wasn't the dominant force. And then the last one I'll give you, it's roughly the same time period, except since 1 year before, since 1993, or I guess that's the same season, 93-94, but they have the most consecutive Division I weeks ranked in the AP top 25 poll with 606 consecutive weeks. So
yeah, cool. That's a lot.
They're good. They're good. Some might say. So okay. So that's kind of just the overall story about how dominant they are. They're on an unbelievable run and have been really since the 90s. There have been other teams that have come in and done really well. The University of Tennessee has 8 total national championships, and most of those came in kind of the 2000s and kind of the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. The University of South Carolina over the past several years has been kind of the main challenger to UConn and is really the main reason that a lot of that I was kind of giving a little bit of a Schrodinger's answer on the on whether the dynasty had ended or not.
Wow.
But anyway,
is that because maybe you think that University of South Carolina might begin their own?
They kind of have this year. Sure. This year they actually when UConn won, they beat South Carolina in the national championship game, and South Carolina's been a perennial power for the past 5 years. So
all right, cool.
They're not going anywhere. So kind of the story sort of starts when Geno arrives in 1985. Geno Auriemma, again, he is statistically the greatest coach in NCAA history, regardless of sport, really. Maybe outside of baseball, actually, now that I think about it, I think there may be some baseball coaches, or one baseball coach that has won more games, but at least in basketball, he has the winningest head coach of all time. He has won, I said UConn women's basketball has won 80% of their games. He has won 88% of his games.
Christ.
At some point, I'm sure we'll talk about the UNC women's soccer dynasty. The only other coach that I can think of is the longtime coach of the Tar Heels, Anson Dorrance, that even scratches that. But he has 1,250 wins to 165 losses.
1,250?
Yes.
Good grief.
Yes. I mean, he's been coaching since 1985.
I'd be amazed if anyone had coached that number, let alone won them. How many did you say he'd lost?
165.
Good God. So it's not even 10 wins for every one loss, which would be like a good season. Like that's a decent record, right?
Yeah. I would say so.
So silly.
Let's do some quick math here. 165 divided by the 40 seasons he's been coaching.
40. Is he what?
Yeah.
Is he still there?
Yeah, he is.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he's averaging 4
way
losses.
To bury
a
the
season.
lead.
Yeah,
how old is this guy?
How old is Geno? All right, we're doing some. You're making me do research. You're showing me that I wasn't prepared.
Sorry.
You're showing all the people I wasn't prepared. He's 71 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, so wow. Okay. I'm gonna write in my book a question that I will save for later.
Okay. Like later this episode or like.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you the opportunity to answer it.
Okay.
And if you do, I'll wave my pen.
We all know the signal, everybody. Well, okay, so again, to kind of walk through the people side and the story side at the same time here, 1990-1991 was really the first season that UConn really started to shine on the national stage. Geno was 6 seasons in, and they were a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, which is a very impressive ranking. Like that's very good. Today, if UConn were ranked a 3 seed, that would be thought of as a below average season for them. But back then, that was the highest seed that they'd ever had at that point. They were not expected to win a national championship. They weren't, they weren't. UConn wasn't on the map at this point. This little program in Storrs, Connecticut, but they did advance to their first ever Final Four. They lost in that first Final Four game in the national semifinals, but they had firmly planted themselves on the national stage. They were in the spotlight. The men's team actually conveniently the season before had just had an incredible kind of dream season of its own, and that brought that program into the spotlight. So everything was kind of on the rise. And then right after that, UConn signed its first, brought on. It was different back then. This is back before college sports was professional. But they recruited their true superstar, their first true legendary superstar, and a player by the name of Rebecca Lobo. She's one of the best players in women's college basketball. She's in the Hall of Fame, and she kind of led them to the promised land for the first time in that first championship that they had in 1995. So as we kind of transition a little bit more into the people, Rebecca Lobo is that first real name to know because she kind of brought them to national prominence for the first time.
Cool.
The next kind of people to go down the list, we're gonna focus on 5 other players. Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, who happens to be the wife of incredible former Team USA standout Megan Rapinoe,
cool.
Legend Megan Rapinoe. Sue Bird, Maya Moore, who is one of the greatest basketball players of all time, in top 3 probably greatest players, at least on the college side, but also had a great WNBA career just in the women's game. Breanna Stewart and Paige Bueckers, who actually just 2 days ago was drafted number 1 overall by the Dallas Wings in the WNBA draft. So Those are kind of the different eras of folks that we're going to talk about. So after Rebecca Lobo's time, and there's more people for sure that are part of this, but these are kind of the defining people that we'll think about forever. Diana Taurasi, who actually just retired from professional basketball and won her 5th Olympic gold medal, kind of sparks this next.
That's insane.
Yeah, unbelievable. She won a
5th
gold medal in Athens.
Olympic
and
gold.
Yes, a gold medal in Athens 04, and then capped it off with Paris 24.
That is a gold medal Olympian for 20 years.
Yes.
That's crazy. I haven't done anything for 20 years.
Well, God. She's done a few other things too, in addition to championships and all sorts of success in her WNBA career. She kind of started this first true dominant streak for UConn when in all 4 of her years she went to the Final Four, and in 3 of those years won the national championship.
Cool.
Yeah. And then follow that up with Sue Bird, who came after and ushered in another era with a great, a great, cast of teammates around her.
Sure.
And, she also went on to have an incredible WNBA career. So she's a part of that. And then we get to Maya Moore, who I was talking about before. Maya Moore is, like I said, one of the greatest players of all time. She came to UConn in 2007, and
cool.
Really from that point on, UConn for an entire decade pretty much was always a contender for the national championship, and it was a surprise when they lost. She, in her time, personally went 150-4 in her own personal record.
Yeah, cool.
In 4 years, she lost 4 games, Harry.
That's insane.
Yeah, again, I was telling you before this that I was going to struggle to make this episode not just a list here, but the numbers are so mind-boggling that...
I think what's really important to remember is that all of these numbers are set against a very, very specific context in college sports. Whereas these athletes are only with this team for, 3, 4, 5 years maximum.
Yep.
So unlike unlike other dynasties for team sports where you build a team, we think about the immediately when you say American sports, you think dynasties. I think of like the Chicago Bulls, right? Mm-hmm. Which was effectively 2 amazing teams spread out across a decade. There was no impetus. There was no mechanism that motivated them to change other than, the quality of the squad. But at college, it's really hard to stay on. It's not impossible. I know that some people extend their stays through various mechanisms. But, the draft happens, you move up into professional sport. So to be able to maintain dominance while constantly recruiting players good enough to maintain, however 1,000 wins against 100 losses. That's incredible. Now this is something that I'm going to discuss later on. Do you think the success, and maybe this is a general thing, do you think the success of a dynasty sort of feeds itself in terms of being attractive to young, talented players?
Absolutely. No question about it, especially in the college game in the era that UConn had the bulk of its success.
Sure.
And especially in women's sports, actually, because of how, historically underfunded, how, and under-resourced they have been historically. If you have, it's almost like in business, you find a market inefficiency and you exploit it, and you're the only one in a market. And this is what we'll talk about. And again, there were other dynasties too. Again, Tennessee, South Carolina more recently. There's others with this, and we'll talk about this in the legacy side of it, where, and this is, this is kind of thought of. I think these kind of questions are often asked with all sorts of dynasties regardless of sport, regardless of gender.
Sure.
Is that dynasty actually good for the sport? Is it a negative? We'll
Right.
talk about that. But yeah, that definitely feeds on itself because, all these great players, Maya Moore came to UConn partially because Diana Taurasi and Sue Bird were there
Right.
before her. Paige Bueckers partially went to UConn, who just got drafted, partially went to UConn because of Maya Moore. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
And above that, everyone's probably coming to UConn because of Geno.
Yes, Geno is Geno is
you can't ignore the 4 decades of supremacy. So in those 4 decades, trends in sport must change. Is something that Geno is particularly good at.
So,
is like evolving, or does Geno have like one specific style that makes these incredible women, fulfill
gets the most out of them?
Strength?
Yeah, I mean, so that I'll be honest here. This is a blind spot for me. My knowledge of basketball, like tactics, is really just not there.
Right.
But Geno has always been an incredible recruiter. I do know that
Right.
he's always gotten, players that fit kind of his style of toughness. Like he's very big on toughness. I know that. But in terms of like how he adapts those strategies,
No, sure.
That's a blind spot for me. But I mean, clearly he's doing something right tactically.
Yeah.
It's not just recruiting. If he's had this success for 40 years, so we get into Maya Moore. Again, she 150-4. I think she's the 4th. It was either at the time. I think she was the 4th player to ever score 3,000 points over a career. 3,000 points, and this was in 4 years. Which is just unbelievable to think about. Their biggest kind of competitor at the end of her era and into this next era that we'll talk about with the player named Breanna Stewart was probably Baylor. That's where I'm sure you may have heard of Brittany Griner, who was a dominant player from there. They had a lot of success during their time, and they had a lot of battles. But so Breanna Stewart's kind of this next era. She leads their team, or she leads her teams to 3 different national championships during her time. She is very much there for actually 4 national championships during her time. She is very much there for the entire for a lot of that streak, that 111 game winning streak that I was talking about before. She also goes number 1 overall in the NBA draft. That's the other thing. UConn has had 6 players go number 1 overall in the draft.
Wow.
Including Paige Bueckers, who this is kind of where we get to the the most recent part of their history. Paige Bueckers is one of the most beloved college athletes, I would say, in the past 10 years or so.
Why?
She her style of play, people really, I mean, she's incredible. I mean, do me a favor and watch some highlights of her.
Sure.
She's a great shooter. Her movement off the ball is really good. She's really good at facilitating too when she needs to. She's a great player. And is a player that kind of intangibly, a lot of her teammates really love her because she's, by all accounts, she's an incredibly supportive teammate.
Cool. Wow.
And so people just love her intangibly too. She's also a great story because she has struggled with a lot of major injuries. She tore her ACL during her college career. Having the COVID setback. She had to deal with a lot over her career. A loss in the Final Four, capped off by this year a win in the national championship. So, she's much beloved and is kind of this most recent dominant player from UConn.
Sure.
I feel like I've just kind of spewed a lot at you. Any response to this?
Something that I want to do on the fly is we said at the beginning we want to talk about Dynasties as the story, the people, the end, and the legacy. I'm going to add one.
Okay.
and we're going to do this to all of them, and we're going to talk about the adversaries, like the other teams. So you mentioned at the moment it's South Carolina who is sort of posing anew, and before that you mentioned it was Tennessee.
Tennessee, Baylor.
Do we have? I imagine like Connecticut, Tennessee, and South Carolina are all on the same side of the country. Are these teams playing each other a lot, or are they sort of separated until they get into the March Madness? Do you know?
They play each other every so often. I mean, Tennessee and South Carolina are in the same conference, but their runs of dominance were they had no overlap at all. Baylor is in a different conference. Notre Dame, another great program. NC State, another great program. Although they haven't won a national championship.
Because this comes back to a question that we've actually touched on multiple times when we've talked about specifically American sports, which is the sort of center of gravity for the most talented teams being sometimes isolated in conferences that are more or less competitive.
Yep.
Like when we discussed, the seeding for college football, how they're all in different conferences, and some of them like the Pac-10 or the ACC are at different levels. If we're talking about the dominance of one team, on the one hand, like the big long list of like how many games they go unbeaten is one thing, but actually it's the play in the March Madness competition, which I think is probably the most accurate weather vane for how dominant they are, and the fact that they are still so dominant with, did you say 12 titles in this time?
Yeah, and I mean their conference, they're in the Big East Conference, which like historically on the men's side is an incredible basketball conference. They're good on the women's side, but don't have that same level of history necessarily. So that's definitely a piece of it, but like to your point, I mean the March Madness success speaks for itself.
So I want to know, are we at the end of this story? Or you said Schrodinger's Dynasty.
Yeah.
Are we? And they just won a national championship. Do you think the threat posed by South Carolina or anybody else is sort of ready to unsettle Geno? And then there's a very obvious question for a coach in their 70s. On the horizon.
As long as Geno is around, I don't think that you can say that they're not a threat. Obviously, they're more than a threat right now. They also have really great players kind of behind. There's there was a player named AZ Fudd who was dominant for them. Sarah, who's just a freshman this year that really had a really good March Madness, and it seems to be a breakout star. Happens to be from Durham, North Carolina. So shout out Sarah. So there's definitely more in the pipeline, but they're definitely more threatened by South Carolina, and also the fact that the wealth is getting spread more in women's college basketball. There's more there's teams that are more teams have more resources now. A lot of programs are starting to catch up. I mean, they're still a perennial contender, but there's plenty of other programs that are on the rise that could pose future threats. But to your point, he's 71 years old. We don't know how long Geno's going to be around. I haven't seen anything. I honestly should probably look it up sometime about, if he's said anything about retirement. But, it's, as long as he's around, I don't think that you'll see them fade completely from the spotlight.
Right.
Yeah, which I think brings us to the legacy. They're going to be known until somebody else is the greatest college basketball dynasty of all time, men's or women's. The only one that you could maybe say comes close is UCLA back in the 1970s and 60s, but that was just a completely different era of basketball. So they're going to be known as the most dominant of all time. And then like we talked about before, there's always a question of, is that kind of dynasty healthy? Again, there's other teams that are investing more, so I don't think it's inherently unhealthy, but, seeing a lot of concentration of the best in one place probably isn't the best overall for the sport, but I think I think reasonable minds can disagree on that one.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of schools of thought for whether or not any given dynasty is healthy,
Yeah.
and it's whether or not it's healthy for the growth of the sport, or for spectatorship, or for the even the strength of the franchise or the program itself. Obviously, you want to see competition. Capital C competition draws fans and draws eyes and draws viewership and draws money. But obviously you need something, you need like a guiding light, I think, and a bar against which everybody else should be set to set the standard for when you... So such incredible domination, I couldn't say is unhealthy. It's amazing that there is a program that is being so impactful, especially in women's sports, especially contributing to the to the women's professional game. I think that's absolutely a net positive. But now I would actually say, if you're saying that the rising tide is raising all boats, yeah, it's actually really exciting that we've got South Carolina to think about. The only thing that I think is the only sort of thing that we romanticize more than a dynasty is when you have like a proper rivalry, especially if they're not in the same conference. And I think that'll be, there will be a trend in this series on Dynasties when we talk about the threat and who comes in and who breaks the supremacy, and how one influences the other. And that's what I would like to see happen here. And long live UConn, but let's see them maintain that against like increasingly good teams, because eventually it has to end. And I hope I hope it doesn't end with Geno as well. Because there's a whole other mini series on like the best coaches and the most influential people in each sport. But what would be really cool is if you've got that a lineage and you've got progression at UConn, which I'm sure won't go away just because Geno goes away. But yeah, let's have. I want South Carolina. I want Geno to hold on until like South Carolina are like right on his heels.
And that'll be a long time just because of the numbers they have to overcome. But South Carolina has incredible win streaks of their own. We've seen LSU make big runs to the Final Four. Obviously, Caitlin Clark in Iowa. USC, UCLA. Like, there's more and more kind of hot spots popping up across the map that are really exciting.
So I think what we're saying is the Athlantic podcast isn't going to let Geno retire.
Yeah, he's staying
if he's
around
listening,
whether he likes it or not.
We need you to hang on.
Exactly.
Great.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing remarks about that's a really good team to kick things off with?
They're pretty good at basketball. Pretty good at basketball. Well, I guess the next thing then is sport math, which I'm now realizing we never did the preview piece of it to play along with us. However, never fear, because I did give Harry a teaser on what the sport math question would be before we started recording. So this is not completely cold to Harry, and hopefully we can still keep this fairly short.
I think so.
I'm trying to be nice, not in the questions that I'm asking, but in the opportunities for points that I'm giving you, Harry.
Yeah.
Because if you will remember, the standings right now are pretty rough for you. We're at 7-0, I think. Sport math leaderboard.
We're gonna change that.
After 3 weeks. So because you inexplicably gave me the opportunity to score 7 points. So here we go. Here's your sport math question. I want the number of rounds in the WNBA draft times the number of indirect free kicks in the Premier League since 2015, which is a little bit
Okay.
Topical because we just had one. And I lifted it straight from an article, so hopefully you read the article. Plus, the number of golfers to complete the career Grand Slam for men. I'll give you a hint. One of them is Rory McIlroy, so there's been at least one.
He is now.
And minus the number of Premier League teams with an animal in their badge, including humans and mythical creatures.
Okay. All right, so immediate thoughts. I do not know 3 of these, but I have a good hunch for 2 of them, and I'm pretty sure I can work out the last one.
Okay.
So we're going to put in the number I do know because I watched every moment of the Masters. I am 89% sure that the number of career Grand Slam golfers is 6, that Rory is the 6th one. So I'm going to put that in there.
Okay.
The number of indirect free kicks, because I watched part of the Ipswich game, horrific goalkeeper. Well, no, whatever. The goalkeeping could have been better. It should have been better. You would expect a goalkeeper to put his foot on that ball. I know that the number of total indirect free kicks in the Premier League is, I say with a certain amount of trepidation, 8. You said after 2015. I really don't think it's 8 since 2015, so I am going to cut that in.
I'm actually going to intervene here because I don't think this is fair.
Okay, fine.
It is 8. 8 is the correct number.
Maybe we read this. Okay,
yeah,
right, fine.
I think we did. Maybe I read. I feel like I should have done a little bit more due diligence on that one, so I want to confirm that because you were on it. So
that is very charitable. So now we talk about the round to the WNBA. I know I have occasionally watched the NFL draft, and that goes forever. And then I was really surprised to find out that the NBA draft is way, way shorter. So I'm going to say that the WNBA draft has either 2 or 3 rounds. And I'm actually going to land on 2. And I didn't even look at your reaction there. So I think this is going to be 2 times 8 plus 6 minus the number of Premier League teams with animals in their badge. We're just going to fly through. I've got to remember all 20 teams. Not Arsenal. Aston Villa, yes. Bournemouth, yes. Brighton, yes. Who's after Brighton? I've seen B at C. Chelsea, yes. Palace, yes. Oh, God, I can't do this in order. Oh, my God. Ipswich is a yes. Leicester is a yes. Did you say including mythical?
Including mythical creatures.
So, Manchester United is yes. Man City is no. Fulham, no. West Ham, no. There's a bird on Liverpool badge, so that's yes. There's a wolf on Wolves, that's yes. That's got to be close.
You've named
there's a cock on the Spurs badge. There's. Did I say? I think I've got 11. Okay. No, there's. I didn't say Brentford. That's 12. Fuck. Excuse my language. I'm sure I've forgotten a football team. Nottingham Forest doesn't have one. You're not counting plants,
trees
right?
Or animals, Harry.
Yeah, good point. So not for Forest, not for Man City. That's a bird and a no, that's a boat and a rose. Not for Southampton. That's also a tree, I think. There's no other. Okay, I'm right. I'm fine with 12. Okay. So now I have to do the maths. So it was rounds of the WNBA, which I've said is 2 times the number of indirect free kicks, which you gave me was 8. That's lovely. So that is 16 plus 6 career Grand Slam golfers minus. I'm saying 12. I think it's 10.
Harry, your number is incorrect. You have two of the numbers correct. And
I've got points.
You were one off on both of the ones that you were wrong on. There are...
Is it 3 rounds?
3 rounds in the WNBA draft.
Yeah, fine.
We already know 8 indirect free kicks.
Yep.
6
the golfers.
Numbers of male golfers to complete the Grand Slam. And the number of Premier League teams with an animal in their badge is 13. You are going to be very mad when I tell you that the one team you forgot is the team that is winning the title race, Liverpool.
Fuck.
So
did I really forget Liverpool?
I think you did.
Oh,
Unless
God.
I go back and I missed something.
It's fine. I've missed... Okay, that's fine. Hey, but I'm on the board.
You are
on the board. The next sport math for you, I'm going to make it good and tricky.
Heck yeah.
And the comeback is on. It is Istanbul, and we've just come out for the second half. And only half of our audience will understand what that means. And one day we will talk about
Yes, we will.
Liverpool's Champions League win in Istanbul, but it's not today. Adam, I had such a good time learning about the UConn's women's basketball dynasty. Oh, that's a weird way of saying that. I'm going to say that again. Adam, I had so much fun learning about the UConn women's basketball dynasty. This is exciting to start a new sort of mini-series. As you said, we're gonna dip in and out of this. Occasionally an episode will drop in and we'll be like, hey, today we're talking about Roger Federer. Hey, today we're talking about Dale Earnhardt.
There you go.
Could be good.
Yeehaw.
Could be good. But yes, I've had a good time. I've learned a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, I look forward to see you in episode 14.
14. It's crazy. I can't believe. I also love just the way that you pronounce dynasty is dynasty. It's like din, like zin, or like sin.
Sure.
I guess.
Like sin.
I guess you could say sin and zin are the same.
Dynasty and dynasty. Yeah, I don't know which one I should be saying. I'll go and
I think you
rewatch
should
that
say
David Attenborough.
What
Dynasty.
you naturally
Dynasty.
say.
Dynasty.
I don't know.
It's a dynasty. No, it's dynasty. I'm gonna stick with dynasty.
Okay. I like it.
Watch me not say that in the next
You're
episode.
never gonna say it ever again.
No, I'm gonna get that wrong.
All right. Follow us on Spotify, please. Subscribe to us on YouTube, please. Hit the notification bell. What are the other things you're supposed to say? Smash that
We're
like
also
button.
we're also on TikTok. Short form videos are coming back in a big way. Adam and I have something a little bit exciting planned in the next couple of real life weeks, which probably means the next 4 or 5 virtual weeks.
Yeah.
Here we go. Absolutely not telling you what that's going to be. But yeah, I've had a great time. Catch us in the next episode, everyone. Good evening, Adam.
Bye.